Hello and welcome to B2B Revenue Leaders. On this episode, I'm joined by Adam Holmgren, who is the Global Demand Generation Lead at GetAccept. We discuss how to align sales and marketing using the same KPIs, how to measure the success of your demand gen program, and we also dive into Adam's LinkedIn ads playbook. Hey, Adam, welcome to the show.
Hey, nice to be here.
How's your day going so far?
Yeah, it's good. It's a bit later here. I'm based out of Sweden, so but I'm getting used to working these hours these days, as we also have a lot of business with the US, of course.
For sure. Yeah, I'm on the opposite end. I'm on the West Coast Canada, and most of my team is East Coast US. So I'm so flip side there. So I want to dive, right into a topic we talked about. I'm new to this role-ish, like 3 months, VP of Revenue role, so overseeing sales and marketing. So a topic near and dear to my heart is sales and marketing alignment. And you mentioned, there is one kind of easy way to help make sure they are aligned. So do you want to dive into your thoughts around that?
Yeah, for sure. And it's always a tricky one, right? And different at every company, and we have different metrics and so on. But I think what I found to be the most critical point to that question is really to have the same, KPIs, to have the same bottom line KPIs you're measured on. If marketing is measured on leads and the sales team is measured on pipeline and revenue, like it's impossible to be aligned. It's never going to happen. And that's where all the discussions around, I'm getting so many bad leads and we're, they're not following up on the leads and yada yada. So I think it feels super easy when you say it, but it's also like, it doesn't really happen at many companies, I feel like.
100%. And usually there's an incentive component as well, which makes it worse, right? So marketing.
Yeah, and that's also an issue of it. Like, there's an incentive from, the sales team, obviously, to book deals, to get pipeline through the door, and maybe some sort of a bonus system. And marketing probably have the same. I've seen many times now to get deals. Like they have some sort of, target to acquire these types of leads. And if they do, they have this quota like that which is a huge problem because then they have an incentive to do opposite things almost.
100%. Yeah. I've been at companies where, you have an MQL target, and if you hit it, you get money.
Yeah.
If I wanted to, I wouldn't do this, but I could drive thousands of MQLs and they would be garbage, and it's not going to come out to revenue. So totally doesn't make sense. So that's why I'm kind of pumped in my role to have a revenue team, not like a sales and marketing team. It makes life so much easier, in my opinion. On the marketing side, tying them to revenue, I have found sometimes marketers will take maybe shortcuts there and like short-term plays to drive revenue and stay away from the long-term kind of demand gen approach that builds. So how do you handle that kind of distinction there?
Yeah, I think especially like, it's always important to get the management team on board in making some kind of transition. But I think it's important you don't have to really make it only demand gen or only lead gen or whatever you call it. I think it's usually we divide it into, demand capture, where we, Google ads is probably the biggest source, right? And then more the demand gen part of it is more the social, the LinkedIn, the Facebook. And I think it's important to have a very healthy balance there. I still think that we, in my role, I think we are somewhere around a ballpark of 60% of our budget goes into more of the capture channel still. And maybe the 40% of the budget into demand gen, demand creation, or whatever you call it. So it's still like, we're still betting a lot on the existing demand, which is also where we can kind of attribute it to revenue in a good way. And the other 40%, it's not really clear to attribute it to revenue, but we think it will have an effect. So I think that's the better play and we did that incrementally. So in the beginning, we were probably 90% demand capture, 10% creation. And then we have kind of, in small steps, gone more and more.
Yeah. And I think it's important to not bite the bullet because they should be doing, but like really invest in demand gen. Because I've been in roles where the space gets more competitive over time. There's new entrants. And then all of a sudden I used to capture a ton of demand. And now there's 15 competitors who I'm battling out in Google ads, and maybe they have a bunch of funding and I don't. So I think making that early investment in demand gen is huge. You mentioned attribution. I'm sure we both have our thoughts on attribution, but on the measurement side for more of the pure demand gen play, how are you measuring the success there?
Yeah, I think as far as, from the, the baseline metrics, we look at, of course, revenue and pipeline, but that's more broad, that's more overall. If we are, running these big demand gen campaigns and programs, overall, we want our marketing, pipeline and ARR to grow, of course. But on the more, if we say micro level, we are looking a lot on engagement metrics, because I think that has a great correlation with those types of, deals coming in, pipeline growing, and so on. So I would say that 75% perhaps of our demand gen work is done on LinkedIn, both paid and organic. That's our by far biggest distribution channel. And I would say when we see that we have great engagement from different campaigns, that's also when we see the big numbers going up. So I think we have a great correlation there, and that is what we are looking at. So I would say mainly we have two. If we take, and I'm going very tactical here, but still, in LinkedIn, usually we have a cold layer where people, they have never heard about us. We have a retargeting layer where we kind of funnel people into that retargeting layer to get more stuff in front of them and get them to know us. In the cold layer, we are running a lot of videos. And for us, the main metric there is really to how many people have completed our videos, like the completion rate, because that tells us if what we're talking about is resonating with the audience. And I think that's also a super interesting way to test our messaging, which is like, we can run something for 2 weeks, a month. Okay, it didn't resonate with our audience. Maybe we should talk about something else, right? So it's a great way to really test messaging. And then when we come into the retargeting layer, then we are looking more on the CTRs and that types of metrics. So we have different engagement metrics for maybe different phases. But I still think those are our key metrics. But then I still think it's valid as a marketing team to measure. We have high intent MQLs as an important one, for example, which is, the demo bookings where people want to talk to sales. That's a critical one for us, I would say. Even if it's not, it won't necessarily turn into pipeline, but it has a very high probability of doing so. So I would say that's the most important early metric for us. And then it's deals and pipeline and the ARR, of course.
Yeah, and I think that's an important distinction on the high intent side, because you can see a high intent MQL to customer. Maybe you have that at 7%, 6%, 8%.
Yeah,
you're doing good. Whereas the old school lead gen model, a lot of times it was 0.001%.
Yeah, exactly.
Conversion rate. You're wasting a bunch of sales time chasing those. I do want to go a little more tactical into the LinkedIn side, because I think a lot of people, myself included in the past, have kind of misused LinkedIn ads and maybe taken the wrong approach.
Yeah.
So it kind of paraphrasing what you said, it sounds like on the cold layer, the goal there is distribution, right? Like get in front of your target audience. How are you building that audience on LinkedIn? Just because there's so many ways to do it, from uploading a company list, using LinkedIn filters. What's your approach on that?
Yeah, I have actually, we are using a few different approaches, but I have been I would say most successful with using LinkedIn's own native targeting and using their, especially job titles, industries, company size and so on, and segmenting that together. Now we're also using the platform from metadata. So kind of trying to funnel that as well into that. And then we're also using intent data from G2, which is also working great, actually. I didn't expect that. So we are doing, but I would say, like, for most, I think the LinkedIn native targeting is fine. There are, many platforms out there like ZoomInfo, like, that you can pull even better data, but it's also a problem of, matching that with LinkedIn sometimes. Yeah. I have felt that, at least. And when I do something on the LinkedIn targeting side, I know I'm going to reach them, even though it might not be perfect. Yeah,
and I find LinkedIn's always adding almost like Google search type stuff. So, in Google, you can add negative keywords and all that, exclude audiences. LinkedIn's actually getting pretty good at that.
Yeah.
Finally, right? Like, you can dig in and say, oh, this job title shouldn't be in here, or this industry shouldn't, and kind of
No,
build
exactly.
your negative list, right?
And I think that's the most powerful thing, right? You create some sort of first targeting step. And then they have their audience insight. You go into there, you look at what companies are actually in that targeting list. And when you see someone that shouldn't be there, you exclude them. And the same thing with job titles that you said, or industries. You might exclude, I did it the other day. We are usually targeting IT tech course in SMB segment. And I noticed that, a lot of banking companies popped up, which is weird. So it's easy to exclude them. But it's a lot of manual work, of course. But I think it's possible, and it's also very cheap to do that.
It is, yeah. And there's, with LinkedIn adding that too, you get kind of that research component as well.
Yeah.
I found that at least, right? Like, this is the group of people who seem to care about this ad or this campaign group, which is kind of nice. Whereas in Google Ads, you don't really know who's clicking it until they fill out a form, or maybe you have some IP matching software that is iffy at best now with remote work.
Yeah.
But I found the market research side on LinkedIn, it can be huge.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
So to dive kind of away from LinkedIn there a little bit, and you kind of hinted at this actually, of getting it out there and then trimming back the campaign. I think execution's an important thing in demand gen and experimentation. So how do you approach that? Because I'm sure you have new ideas daily from you and your team. How do you prioritize, test things, scale things?
Yeah, sure. I think I said this I do this to my CMO like every night. I tend to message her some kind of idea every night, and they're like ranging from, I think this is a brilliant idea, to like something that is, it's not good. So there are a lot of ideas, and then we kind of have to funnel it, of course, into what's possible and what do we believe in. But especially when it comes to the social side, I believe in, lots and lots of shorter experiments and then scaling. And usually the approach we tend to take are more the experiments in 2-week sprints almost. We have an idea, we run with it for 2 weeks, we look at the results. No, it's not going to be statistically significant, but we're going to get a good hunt if it's engaging with the audience. If it seems to be, we have certain percentages in the KPIs I said before. This is a good ad or a good campaign for us. This is an excellent one, and so on. And if we are seeing like early signs of an excellent one, okay, then we scale it, of course. And then, so that's like the super simple route we tend to take. We never have any problem coming up with ideas. That's really and it's not like we don't have a super sophisticated model to decide what experiments to run. I'm a big believer in going by the gut feel also. So that's usually what it is, to be honest. But we tend to run it for 2 weeks, then take some sort of decision if we should cut it completely, if we should run it for a little bit longer, or if we should scale it.
I think a key takeaway there is not to get stuck in kind of, analysis paralysis of, should we run this ad? Is this word the right word?
Yeah.
Because then you're going to never get an ad out the door and you're never going to learn. So
no, and I try to see paid social very equal to my own, organic social. I started posting a lot last year on LinkedIn and have been and now I'm almost posting daily, right? But I'm spending less and less time on each post since I don't know, I'm getting more of the hang of it, of course, but also then I'm also understanding and experimenting a bit faster. And that's kind of the approach I'm also trying to take in paid social. It's not like we don't have to see it that seriously all the time. We can also just throw something out there. It doesn't have to be a perfect design or perfect. I shouldn't say that to my designers though, because they are not that happy with me all the time. But it's still even if it's a bad visual, we have tested a theory and then we can decide it well. I think that's important.
Yeah, and I think everything's kind of getting democratized there a little bit. I am far from a designer, but I can whip up something okay in Canva.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually see, right? So that can be tough at companies though, where there's a bit of red tape and, everything has to be by the book.
Yeah.
But sometimes you'll get slapped on the wrist for this, but I feel like you just have to ask for forgiveness and put it out there and see what happens, right?
I feel like that's the best approach to it. Because if you can show that something, okay, this actually worked great, even though the design might not be perfect, then we have a good opportunity here. I think you're forgiven pretty quickly.
Exactly. Yeah. And if it fails, I mean, it's a quick 2-week experiment, and
Yeah.
we're all going to fail. Most experiments are going to fail, honestly. Like a small amount
Yeah.
are going to work. So you mentioned LinkedIn organic, and I won't say a trend because I feel like it's been building for a while, but the influencer marketing side,
Mm.
it's coming slow to B2B, I think. B2C been around forever. You're seeing like people paying for Dave Gerhardt to post a
Yeah.
sponsored ad. That's new. Like I haven't seen
Yeah.
that too much. So I'm curious your thoughts there. Do you think it's something that's going to be big in 2023, and where's it going?
Yeah. I really think it's for sure the next big thing in terms of tactics. I'm not sure it's going to be big already in 2023, but probably for some companies. We have done a few iterations of that. Like we have, partnered with a few individuals, not for them to post about our product necessarily, but more in the, posting funny memes or stuff like that together with them. But I think the hard thing about that is also to make it genuine, right? To not pay. If Dave Gerhardt is going to post something, he obviously want to do it in a genuine way. It's probably going to be about some sort of MarTech product that he actually think is good. And so I think that will be the issue for a company, to find these people that will genuinely think your product is good and what you stand for is good. And I haven't really, because in B2C, there are all of these companies and services that work with bringing companies and influencers together. I haven't really seen that in B2B. I haven't really researched either, but so maybe that will start popping up.
I think that's interesting. So the closest kind of see to that is the like the podcast matching.
Yeah, that's true.
Essentially, right? But that's a very specific niche, right? Like they're finding your audience. It's kind of an organic version of that rather than a sponsored play.
Exactly.
But I do think that it's going to be interesting to see which way that goes. But I think that's a viable, affordable play for most companies, right? Is create content with people who are your ICP. They get good content from you. They amplify your message. Influencer marketing to an extent. But yeah,
I also think like it's going to be very cheap in comparison to running paid ads, right? If you can get it in the hands of someone with, I don't know, just 10,000 followers, that's still going to reach a huge amount of people.
Yeah, 100%. I find, the more niche ones with a very defined audience, the more like micro influencer, I guess, are the ones that are really going to pay off. So to jump back, into the demand gen and kind of the experimentation side and dive into specifics a little bit here. We've all had failed experiments. We've all had great ones. I'd love to hear maybe one of both. Like what is something you thought was going to work and maybe didn't pan out? And then what is one that you ran and just knocked it out of the park for you?
Yeah, I think in general, what tend to work for us is, when we include people, when we are humoristic about something, so something that have worked extremely well for us, and it hasn't really, to be honest, been that hard, and it wasn't a big project at all, was we have had one of our sales leaders sit down on a couch talking about a very specific, topic, educating our audience. But he is also a very charismatic person, a very humoristic person. So he kind of made that into a talk that were a lot of fun. He also has a mustache that is very special. So we actually,
I saw him,
after we released that, we had a bunch of inbounds coming in, and in the self-reported field, they said that they found us through the mustache guy. It's like that was still a big success for us, and we have been running quite a lot of those with him, and like iterating on different topics and messages. So that was kind of the start of us also realizing that people and humor fits well with our audience, and that we have some sort of take on what works. And I don't know, and what hasn't worked, it's a lot of things that hasn't worked. I feel like everything we do when it's just talking about product usually works really, really bad. Like it can be like animated product movies, things like that. People just don't care. Like how is this relevant to me? It feels like if you do something like that, like a product related thing, it has to be so on point to their specific need right now, to be relevant, right? And it's almost impossible.
It is, yeah. I mean, maybe the exception is very niche remarketing. They've been to your
Yeah.
pricing page, they're super down funnel. The closest I've seen that have kind of managed to pull that off, even though it's not product, is I think Gong did it first, then Metadata, and then Chili Piper. But
Mm.
the recorded sales demo, customers talking about their experience with the product,
Yeah.
that kind of authentic customer voice might be the play there on the product side rather than a click walkthrough, old school demo.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like, yeah, like a product tour or product demo doesn't really engage anyone if you don't have a context, I feel like. And yeah.
Yeah, especially with things like Novatic and a few others popping up where you can just play around with the product on the site.
Yeah,
I'd rather
exactly.
do that than sit. Maybe I just don't have an attention span, but sitting through
No.
like a 3, 4, 10-minute video, it's just not going to happen if it's a product walkthrough.
And I guess another thing that's not necessarily a campaign that failed, but it's more of a bigger fail is we, obviously now we have a lot of focus on our demand gen model, bringing high intent MQLs in, bringing deals pipeline. But we also had a point where we released freemium and we tried to go the product led route and we really had the anticipation that this was going to blow our growth out of the roof. And then it did blow the inbounds out of the roof. It like doubled overnight, but then nothing happened. It was like dead. It was radio silence after that. So that was, and after that, we obviously went back to the more demand gen model because we realized that, okay, this might not be the best product-led product in that sense.
Yeah, PLG is hard. Like I did that as well. I switched at a different company. I switched from demo to trial. Leads went through the roof, bunch of people starting trials. But if you don't have perfect onboarding, easy product, like if you didn't really nail it, they're just not going to go back in there ever again. So I can share that failure.
Exactly. I feel like we all of us aren't the Spotify or the Dropbox, right? So it's like
100%.
It's different.
Yeah. And then one thing you mentioned during that, kind of tying it back to the KPI thing at the start, is you mentioned self-reported attribution. It's something we implemented recently-ish, like shortly after I started, so about 2.5 months ago. And I've had some interesting takeaways there, but how are you combining that data with traditional attribution to kind of figure out what's working, what's not?
Yeah, I think the funny thing with self-reported attribution, it gives a lot of insights for sure, but it also gives a lot of nonsense answers.
Yeah.
The answers that are, exactly. Internet is a classical one. Just Google is one. Like it's insights that doesn't really tell you anything. But then there are very, we see our biggest insight from the self-reported attribution are people saying LinkedIn, but they're attributed often to direct or search in somewhere. But that happens quite a lot. And it has actually, it has made us even more realize the importance of, not obsessing over attribution too much. Same thing with people coming from different review sites like G2, we have seen that as well. So that, and then like 50% of everything that we get in are some sort of word of mouth. They used us at a previous company. They are, recommendation, communities, all of that. And I think that's also very telling for how, the word of mouth, how effective it is and how it's hard for us to like attribute it to something or to like an activity, but it's happening. So I think that's, we have a regular attribution that we have HubSpot, we do the regular attribution there. And I would say like maybe 50% or so of our, inbound in general are direct. So, and then it's hard to even say anything, right? The only thing that's probably true in the attribution are more the paid search side or the more organic search side. But even there, a lot of those stuff are coming from brand. And okay, if they're coming from brand, where did they hear about us first? Yeah, it probably is somewhere else. So we're not taking a super scientific, approach to attribution. To be fair, we are looking at it like, especially paid search, more like where are we? What keywords in non-brand are driving most deals, pipeline, ARR, and so on. But then it's much more of a quality aspect in the other areas.
Yeah, we're taking a similar approach, and it is helpful exactly what you mentioned for direct. I've, been in roles before where direct spikes 100% this month. I get asked why, and I'm like, I don't did these things in content. Like we launched these episodes, maybe it's from here. So at least it gives you a little bit of that case.
Yep.
The shocking one for us personally was I heard about you from a friend. So kind of word of mouth. Like my colleague recommended you. And I wish I could find a way to scale that more aside from just having a good customer experience and generating demand. Okay.
Yeah.
I think whoever cracks that user gem's kind of trying to do it. But whoever figures that out, I just think there's such a huge opportunity.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also, I know a lot of companies that have these great referral programs, right? Where you can, refer someone, and that is also something I would really want to crack at some point. But it also demands that your product have a lot of things you could maybe get upgraded to or get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Referral. There's two things I've never been able to crack for sure. Referral is one of them. And YouTube, like organic YouTube. I've failed miserably at many times. So I want to solve those two. I just don't have the answer there.
Yeah.
So Adam, thanks for joining me. A lot of demand gen talk there. I know you post a lot of great content on LinkedIn. So if our listeners want to reach out to you, follow you, learn more about GetAccept, where can they go for that?
Yeah, just visit me on LinkedIn, Adam Holmgren. Posting pretty daily about demand gen in general.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll include that in the show notes. But thanks again for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
My key takeaway on this one was just, again, reiterating the importance of having sales and marketing driving toward the same KPIs. In my case, sales and marketing are both on my team. It's very aligned, and it really is because of that. But I've been in situations where it's just drive MQLs, and then marketing doesn't really care if they turn out to actual revenue or pipeline. And then you get the marketing versus sales thing, and it's just a nightmare. So I know I'm beating this one to death a little bit, but I think it's super important. And as marketers, we've all kind of felt it. And Adam gives a nice, easy solution here on what you can do to kind of skip that problem. So again, thanks for joining me on this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please head on over to Apple Podcasts, either leave us a 5-star review or subscribe to follow along for future episodes. Until next time.